How was the weekend for you two gentlemen?
I thought it was great. I thought we saw some upsets this week that we weren't going to see. I thought we saw some teams get knocked off in their conference that we didn't think was going to happen. I thought it was a great weekend for college football.
I thought it was tremendous. But Alabama's in a class of their own. And I think the Heisman race is over already. Tua has just been unbelievable. He throws more touchdowns than he does incompletions. But the national championship is a long ways away. Notre Dame's still on track. Ohio State's on track. Georgia's on track. But Georgia, in a row, Mark, has to play LSU and then Kentucky, Florida, and Auburn, not necessarily in that order, but that's the next 4 games.
Wow.
Well, it was exciting for everybody, but I will tell you, Alabama, as Coach said, Tua probably going to win the Heisman. You could say that. I read an article recently that went back to 2012 and the article was pretty much titled, "After Week 6, Give Geno Smith the Heisman Now." Most of the people in the studio here can't name who Geno Smith is or even where he played college football. So with that said, let's talk about Week 6. We had 2 big contests. We had the College Football Show contest and the Week 6 Rapid 5 contest. In the College Football Show contest, Oklahoma at Texas, Red River rivalry, that was a push. You gentlemen both picked Oklahoma. Boston College at number 23, NC State. Gentlemen both picked NC State, but you know what? Mark, you went on the spread. LSU went into the swamp. Neither one of you picked Florida because they won. That's a push as well. And Notre Dame at Virginia Tech, and we know who won that. The only one that used to coach at Notre Dame. So let's talk about Oklahoma, undefeated, number 6, going at the Red River rivalry in Dallas State Fair against an upstart number 22, Tom Herman and his Texas Longhorns. See how this is going to go. Was just an oversight that Army took Oklahoma to overtime a couple weeks prior? Was it an oversight that that young Texas was starting to be some ranked teams? Well, I don't think it was an oversight because it was some real Texas football, because in a rivalry, records don't matter. Mark, your thoughts on that game?
Well, this was obviously an offensive shootout at 48-45, but I think when you look at Oklahoma, the problem isn't Kyler Murray or their offense. They can get it done scoring 45 points on the road. The problem is their defense. That's the reason why they fired their defensive coordinator, Mike Stoops, because he wasn't getting the job done. But in this game, if you look at the quarterback for Texas, it did a terrific job in this game, Ellinger. He had another huge game. He had a big game last year against Oklahoma and another big game this year with 5 total touchdowns, 3 in the air, 2 on the ground. Coach, he did a terrific job in this football game, running it, throwing it, but I was most impressed when he ran the football. It wasn't his total yards and 72 yards on the ground. It's like when they had to have it on 3rd and short, when they had to have it on 4th and short, he was able to move the chains. Sam Ellinger did a heck of a job in this football game for the Texas Longhorns.
He did a great job, Mark, and he didn't slide. I mean, he goes head first. He's a great competitor, loves the game of football. And Texas is getting better each and every week. They started out losing to Maryland, and then they only beat Tulsa, I think, by 28-21. However, I agree with you about Oklahoma's defense. In the last 2 years, Oklahoma's lost 4 games, and I believe the minimum amount of points they scored on offense in those 4 losses is 45 points. That's why he's replaced by Stoops. It's very unusual to replace a coach in the middle of the season. He's hired Ruffin McNeil. Now, Ruffin McNeil was the defense coordinator for Mike Leach. When Mike Leach got fired at Texas Tech, Ruffin McNeil coached in the bowl game, then went to East Carolina, took Lincoln Riley with him. Then when he got fired at East Carolina, he went to Virginia 1 year. The minute Lincoln Riley became head coach, he goes back and hires Ruffin McNeil. We'll have to see if that makes a difference with their defense. However, the yardage on both sides was very even, but Oklahoma had 3 turnovers, and you can't win when you turn the ball over that many times.
Ruffin McNeil won some games at East Carolina, if we remember, but you also got to think about what's going on in Texas right now. It used to be Matthew McConaughey was the only cool guy on the sidelines. I don't know if anybody can be cooler than Sam Ellinger, and now you've got a freshman, Cameron Dicker. So you got a freshman, a sophomore, and then you had a freshman holder. They're all on that sideline. Matthew McConaughey now is 3rd wheel. Coach will tell Angie maybe he'll give a shout out to her. But we go to Boston College and NC State, number 23, NC State, undefeated, waiting to play Clemson. Have they really played anybody? Because remember, the Marshall game was postponed. 28-23, Ryan Finley and the Wolfpack take care of business. Hey, we've got 2 undefeated teams left in the ACC. Mark, Talk to us about this one.
Well, I talked about this last week on our show that A.J. Dillon might not play in this game because he got nicked up in the previous game. He didn't even make the trip in this game, and that kind of hurt Boston College. But the key for NC State, they took a 28-3 lead early in this football game. They were able to hang on in this football game, and I think Ryan Finley's one of the top quarterbacks in the country that nobody's talking about. He had another 300-yard passing game. I thought that was key in this game. Their defense held on in the end. Hey, if you look at NC State, that's one of those teams that nobody's really talking about that's still undefeated at this point in the season, Coach.
Well, if A.J. Dillon had played, he's one of the best running backs in the country. It certainly hurt Boston College. But the fact is, NC State had 533 yards. Boston College had 318. They outgained them by over 200 yards. However, NC State had 4 turnovers in the football game. I agree with you about the quarterback. They're a good football team. They haven't really been tested yet. We'll find out very, very soon when they play Clemson.
That's going to be next week, and we're going to talk about, or in 2 weeks, and that's going to be pretty much our game of the week. The game of the week this past week was LSU went into the swamp in Gainesville. Now, as we said, since 1973, every time that LSU played at Gainesville, Florida won. And that was every time they played at Gainesville on Saturday, October 6th. And it was twice. Well, guess what? Now the third time's the charm, because the Florida Gators have a defense. We talk about offense and Dan Mullen, but they have some defense. And more importantly, Joe Burrow threw the first interception of his career, and it was 6 points for the other team. Mark, big win there, because both of you all picked LSU.
Well, this is a game we thought would be a very low-scoring game, and it was 14-13 going into the fourth quarter until we had an offensive explosion in the fourth quarter with 19 total combined points. But I think for Dan Mullen, his defense did one heck of a job against this LSU offense. And for Joe Burrow, he threw his first interceptions of the year. You mentioned the pick six. He also had another interception. Both of these are on the road. I think with Joe Burrow, he's the quarterback. He's got to manage the football game. He can't turn the ball over. The formula for LSU has been run the ball, stop the run, and no turnovers. That's the way they've been able to win this year. They go on the road and turn the ball over, and they weren't really that effective running the ball against this Florida defense.
No, not at all, Mark. And the amazing thing is, the last 4 times LSU has gone in to the swamp and ranked in the top 5. 4 straight times they've lost to Florida. So this is just something that's sort of crazy there in the swamp. But the fact is that if LSU cannot run the football, then they're forced to throw the football. And Burrows is very, very good, but I don't think their pass concept is that complicated, and he threw the out cut, which was intercepted. My feeling as a coach, let's throw the out and the up before they intercept the out. You cover the out and the up, then I know I can complete the out cut. Prime example, you risk 6 yards versus 6 points, and those are not good odds for LSU. But let's give Florida credit. It's going to set up a great showdown with them in Georgia in a week.
Well, that will be another sparring partner bowl. We'll get into that later. But, Coach, as you said, cover the up, cover the out. Well, down in Blacksburg, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame. I think Virginia Tech needs to work on just covering the guy who's running the ball. Dexter Williams took it to the house quite often, and they didn't really need Ian Book to be magic, because Notre Dame had some defense. They made plays, they scored, and they ran the ball. So I think Enter Sandman was drowned out very quickly by an Irish jig in Blacksburg. Notre Dame wins big, and Coach, you won that pick straight up. Mark, talk to us about that, what you saw.
I think there are 2 keys in this football game that were really stood out for me. The first one is you can't bring a field goal to a touchdown fight. So Virginia Tech's kicking field goals, Notre Dame's scoring touchdowns. The second thing is when you've got the ball inside the 2-yard line and you can't knock it in for a touchdown, they have to kick a field goal. From that point on, it was downhill for Virginia Tech. They needed to score touchdowns in this game, and Dexter Williams was phenomenal. The 97-yard touchdown run really broke Virginia Tech's back. I thought from that point on, the game was over, Coach.
I agree with you. I thought it was over before the kickoff. The amazing thing, though, Virginia outgained Notre Dame by about 5 yards. It was very, very equal. But as you said, the thing about Notre Dame, Dexter Williams rushed for 175 yards on 17 carries, averaged over 10 yards a carry. Miles Boykin caught passes for over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Williams, as a running back, scored 3 touchdowns. Then you have a very, very good quarterback, and your defense is playing pretty good. 9 starters coming back. They're not dominating the game as per se. Teams are having success moving the football. But their red zone defense, Mark, on the goal line, they're playing exceptionally well. I always felt when you're on the goal line, you better play like you're on the edge of a cliff. You can't take one step back. Let's give Notre Dame an awful lot of credit. However, Virginia Tech did outgain them, which gives them some hope for the future.
Notre Dame's got a clear road ahead. You know, they have some visitors coming that may try to get in their way, but that's our college football show contest. We have a clear road ahead to our Week 6 Rapid 5 contest. And we had 5 games. Number 13, Kentucky at Texas A&M, Florida State at number 17, Miami, Maryland at number 15, Michigan, Indiana at number 3, Ohio State, and Navy went out to Air Force. Here's what's exciting. The home field teams won every game. So every time someone came to a visit, you know what? People weren't too hospitable. And that started down in College Station, Texas. And that was close. 20-14 in overtime. Kentucky had chances, plenty of chances. But Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M, said, you know what? We're not as bad as people think. Mark, talk to us.
Well, it was the Texas A&M defense that got it done. They held Kentucky to a total of 153 yards, 70 on the ground. Benny Snell in this football game didn't run the ball effectively. He only had 60 yards. I thought that was the key to the game. The other thing, if you look at this football game and break it down, Travion Williams, the running back, had over 210 all-purpose yards in this game. That was the key for Texas A&M, for them to move the ball, make plays. They ran it on the ground. They got the job done. I thought that was key in this game. When you've got a quarterback that can make plays in mind, I think that was the key for Texas A&M offensively. But I still think, if you look at Kentucky, their recipe is like another recipe like LSU. Run the ball, stop the run. They did in this game stop the run fairly decently, but they weren't effective running the ball. And you can't be a one-dimensional offense in any game. You've got to be able to throw the ball vertically, and Kentucky just hasn't proven that this season.
As we said last week, I love Mike Elko, the defense coordinator for Texas A&M. It wasn't Wake Forest, and he was hired by Brian Keller at Notre Dame. Then he went for over $2 million a year, and he is earning every cent of it. I mean, they just dominated Kentucky's offense. It was a great performance, and I think that Texas A&M got beat by 20-some points by Alabama, but they're coming along. Jumbo Fisher can be very, very proud of the success that they're having.
That's why coaches get paid so much, so we can second guess them. 32 in third and two. Overtime?
Just a minute. I made $95,000 at Notre Dame, so don't give me that how much coaches make. But fortunately, Notre Dame has an open bye this week.
Maybe we talk about Kentucky, Texas A&M, and in this new environment of coaches getting paid too much. How about that, Coach? I think you'll agree with that, because when it's 3rd and 2 in overtime and you have Benny Snell on your team, just give him the ball. Just give him the ball. Don't get cute. But that's what Kentucky next week has a bye, and Texas A&M goes South Carolina. Our second game, Florida State at number 17, Miami. Some people thought this was going to be a blowout. We said, hey, you know what? Florida State the week prior, they got some confidence by beating Louisville, coming back. They go down to the Hard Rock Stadium, and they're up 27-7 in the 3rd quarter. But then that turnover chain came out, and they won 28-7. And Mark, you won this in a push. Mark, talk to us about what went down in Miami.
The wheels just came off for this offense of Florida State and the defense. I think when you look at this football team, they just can't get it together. Willie Taggart has to look in the mirror and decide what they have to do with this football team. For this team to get it going, they're going to have to make some changes down at Florida State. But you've got to take your hat off to Mark Richt and the Miami Hurricanes, being down 27-7 in this football game, fighting back in the second half. N'Kosi Perry, the quarterback, throwing 4 touchdown passes in this game. The grit of the defense. I thought Miami really showed what kind of character they had in this football game, Coach. To be down like that in the second half, to come roaring back late in the football game, scored 2 touchdowns in the blink of an eye. I thought when you look at their offense and their defense, they finally put it together. Hey, Miami's got it rolling right now. You've got to look at this team and say they're going to be contenders in the ACC.
I definitely believe that. I think their defense played exceptionally well. Manny Fernandez, their defense coordinator, really has them flying around the ball, creating turnovers, etc. But the fact is that Clemson's offensive line, Mark, is probably as bad as there is any in college football. I give Willie Taggart an awful lot of credit. Earlier in the year, Florida State looked very poor on defense. They looked excellent on defense against a very good Miami team. Yeah, Perry threw for 4 touchdowns, but he completed less than 33% of his passes for the afternoon. So at Florida State, they have a great running back in Cam Akers. They got a good quarterback in Frank Hoyt. But their offensive line doesn't give them protection. They don't give them any running room. And if you can't play in the offensive line, you might as well tell them to warm the bus up at halftime. We're going home.
we're going to hear more about the Hurricanes and the Seminoles later in the season. Maryland goes into number 15 Michigan. You know what? This one pretty much played out exactly as we thought. Coach, you won on a spread, and it was a 21-point victory for the Wolverines, who are getting ready for a big game coming this week. I don't think there are any surprises. We're just going to take Maryland for the rest of the year. And is Michigan kind of going to get ready for this next game, Mark? What do you think?
Well, when you look at this game, if you look at Maryland, Maryland did have the lead in this game early. They had a long kickoff return for a touchdown. They had a 7-3 lead. But Michigan just out-physical them at the point of attack. They were bigger. They were more physical. They got the job done. They had 465 yards total offense to 203. And it was just a physical mugging in this football game. Shea Patterson had 3 touchdown passes in this game. But it was up front that got it done. They were bigger. They were more physical at the point of attack. They won the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. That's why Michigan beat up on Maryland.
I really get upset when I hear different people for the past couple of weeks saying, well, Jim Harbaugh can't coach. He can coach. He won at Stanford, he won at San Diego, and he will win big time at Michigan. This is a very, very good Michigan football team. When you look at defense, they're almost number 1 in every defensive statistic. Brown, their defensive coordinator, did a tremendous job. They were great last year on defense. They have 9 starters coming back this year. They're even better this year. Devin Bush, their linebacker, is absolutely unbelievable. Nobody can block him. And then the way Shea Patterson's playing, their offensive line's starting to come along. They're starting to run the ball a little bit. They're getting a little bit more physical. They are going to be a team to reckon, and I would not be surprised if Michigan goes into Ohio State with only 1 loss.
Michigan going to Ohio State with 1 loss. Well, Ohio State, they weren't close to a loss this week, but I think that Indiana, in our 4th game, Indiana at number 3 Ohio State, I think Indiana stayed around a little bit longer than people thought about, or at least thought they would. Now, we said it was coming off a big win against Penn State, so got a little solid advice in the locker room, I'm sure, at halftime, did the Buckeyes. But, 49-26, I thought a lot of people thought it would be a lot more. What's your thoughts right now? Buckeyes pretty much exactly where you thought they'd be, Mark?
Yeah, they're exactly where I thought they would be at this point in time. If you look at Indiana, though, Indiana had 28-20 at halftime. They were right in this football game. And not only that, they had to rely on their quarterback, Dwayne Haskins, again in the second half to have a big second half. He did throw 2 interceptions in this game, but he also had 6 touchdown passes. I thought that was key for the Buckeyes. And when you look at the Buckeyes, they just have more talent than Indiana. You thought they're going to steamroll over this football team. I definitely did. I knew they'd take over in the second half and run away with it because they usually do. And I think one thing about Ohio State that I still continue to worry about, it's their defense. 1, their run defense. 2, their scoring defense. They're giving up a lot of yards on the ground, Coach, and they're giving up a lot of points, and that's not very good when you're going to go right down to the end in the Big Ten because you're going to be playing against some tough teams the rest of the way, and you can't have mistakes on defense that they've had this year so far.
I'm sure that Urban Meyer doesn't sleep very well because of the defense. There's certain principles about defense. There's a head football coach you want to know. Defensive coaches too many times try to find a 12th man. You can't find it. You got to learn to shed blocks. You got to cross face it. You got to be able to tackle, etc. Let's remember that Ohio State only had 3 starters coming back on defense, and then they lost Joey Bosa, the best pass rusher in the entire college football scene. When he'll be back, we don't know. But I agree with you. They're not playing particularly well on defense, and they're playing an awful lot of man-free defense. And man-free defense is okay as long as you get some pressure from a 4 or 5 man rush. They aren't be able to do that on a consistent basis. So I think Urban Meyer's a great football coach. So's Nick Sirianni, the great defensive coordinator who won successfully at Rutgers. I'm sure they will get it straight, and they better get it straight soon.
We'll get it straight as we get closer to the Golden Gophers coming to the Horseshoe next. And Indiana's going to go out there will host the Hawkeyes of Iowa. Our last game, 2 predictions. And, Coach, you picked Navy. Mark, you picked Air Force with Colonel Gibson Mincer up there at Bowling Air Force Base. But you know what? I think her flag football team, I know they won that game. But the game at Colorado State, that probably wasn't much better. Navy went out there, bad weather, and got sonked 35-7. Mark, you saw this talk. What do you think?
Head coach Ken Niumatalolo said we got our butts kicked, and they did in this game. DJ Hammond, the quarterback of Air Force, didn't even know he was going to start this football game until the morning walkthrough, Coach. And he goes out and runs for 3 touchdowns, throws for another touchdown, 4 touchdowns in this game for DJ Hammond. And not only that, if you look at the defensive Air Force, that was key in this game. They held Navy to just 124 rushing yards. If Navy can't run the football, they can't win football games because they are a one-dimensional offense, Coach.
Oh, I agree with you. None of that. Air Force threw for 145 yards in the air, and that never happens for the Air Force particularly. But I think that this is not the Navy-type football team the last 2 years that we're used to seeing at Navy. They aren't explosive. The fullback's not very productive. At any time you gain under 200 yards in that offense, you're going to have serious trouble. You look at the academy. When they play Notre Dame, they play the big-time schools, they have to be able to control the football. They got to keep the other team's offense on the sideline because they don't have the athleticism to play great defense, and they can't do that. They can't even do that against Air Force. And if Russians watch that game, watch out, they're going to attack us.
Well, good luck to the cadets of the Air Force Academy, because they win one more game against Army, and they've got that Commander-in-Chief's trophy. But also, congratulations to the Bowling Air Force flag football team over Anacostia, led by one Mark May's niece. Well, gentlemen, that wraps up our Week 6 predictions. And go back to this national championship prediction that we started in Week 1. Coach Holtz, you had Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, and then Ohio State. Mark, you have Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and then Washington. So, Coach, I think you put it out on Twitter the other day. I think you're set. You just like to add a 15. What do you think?
I would like to add UCF, because I tell you, I think they're a good football team. They beat Pitt 42-14. Now, I understand that's not a great win, but they are dominant in the way they do things. And Milton's having a tremendous year. Alabama, though, I don't have them on, because I think that Georgia has a chance to beat them. But boy, the longer we go, I got to say this, it's very hard to go against Alabama the way Tua's playing. He throws more touchdowns. He was 13 out of 16 with 4 touchdown passes, 335 yards, I think it was. 3 incompletions, 4 touchdowns, and Alabama's receivers are all sophomores. They can run the football. Defensively, they're not playing as well, but I'm not worried about Alabama defense when they get to the big time. They're going to be fine. Other than A&M, where they only won the game by 20-some points. Alabama has not played a game where they won by less than, what, 40? I mean, they have dominated. I just think that they're in a class by themselves. However, I still like Georgia. I think Georgia's a great football team. However, LSU, Florida, Kentucky, and Auburn in a row, that's very difficult. Where you look at Alabama and their big game, only hard game on the schedule remaining would be Auburn with a couple losses.
I look at it, I'm keeping my teams, Kevin. I'm keeping my teams. I'm hanging in there. We're only at the halfway point. A lot of things can happen. A lot of things can happen. I've got Alabama. The bottom line is you have to pick the national champion. I've got Alabama and you don't. Hey, it's Alabama here and everybody else down here. So it's Alabama's party. They're throwing the party.
How could you not put Notre Dame in there? You look at their schedule. They're open this week, then they're open the following week, and then they have Navy, they have Northwestern, they have Syracuse, and they have Southern Cal. They're locked to come in there, and boy, they're a good football team. Brian Kelly's doing a tremendous job. Great motivation on that team, Mark. It just shows your bias.
Not biased at all. You tend to forget history.
Notre Dame, either one. One time I want to hear you say something positive about them.
You tend to forget history. I can remember a year when everything went Notre Dame's way. Teams in front of them had a bunch of injuries. They didn't play as well as they should have. Notre Dame ended up playing teams that we thought were going to be ranked. At the end of the season, they weren't. That was 2012, and they played Alabama in the national championship game. It was over by the first quarter.
But wait, Mark. They were still laughing because you were in that leprechaun outfit, and they were laughing so hard they couldn't play. Let's move on.
Well, gentlemen, let's save all this up because we got a big pick coming up.